Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Harrisburg City Council Legislative Session. Today is Tuesday, November the 24th, 2020. I'm calling this meeting to order at 6 o'clock p.m. Mr. Petrosky, please do the roll call.
Mr. Allett?
Present.
Ms. Bowers?
Present.
Ms. Daniels?
Here.
Ms. Green?
Present.
Mr. Madsen?
Here.
Mr. Majors?
Here.
Ms. Williams?
Present. Thank you, Mr. Petrosky. We now will move on to the invocation. Mr. Allett.
Thank you. I was just informed earlier today that unfortunately our Public Works Director, Aaron Johnson, has not been feeling well and is ill as of late. So if we could keep him and his family in our thoughts and not to underestimate or overinflate the feeling, but obviously we were still in the ravages of a pandemic that has affected so many of people locally and around the country and around the world. And as we head into a holiday season where we are looking to give thanks, it's harder because many of us will not be with our entire families, often with just a few select people. So we could just think of our community members who are in some cases perhaps alone or infirmed, those who've been ravaged by COVID. I would really appreciate that. And one last thought too, we are in a period of major transition. So certainly if we could keep our president-elect and vice president-elect Biden and Harris as they prepare to transition and take on the worst pandemic we've ever experienced as a nation. So if we could just bow our heads for just a moment and whether it be thoughts or prayers or whatever you want to lift up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allett. We now move on to Pledge Allegiance. Ms. Bowers.
Thank you. I'd ask my colleagues to please join me by conducting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. Bowers. We will now move on to the presentation of proposed 2021 budget. Mayor Eric Pappenfuss. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam President. It's a delight to be before you this evening. Thank you for this opportunity to present the 2021 budget. I'm going to share our screen here and bring it up so everyone can see. All right. And I wanted to begin with a little bit of a discussion of what happened last week, which was the extension of our earned income tax and local services taxing powers. So we can go to the first slide. I think, as many of you know, under the provisions allowed under Act 47 and Act 124, the city has imposed a higher earned income tax and local services tax rate than would otherwise have been allowed under state law. Very importantly, this elevated local services tax allows us to share the burden with workers that do not necessarily live in the city of Harrisburg. We fought for that increase back in 2016, and ever since then, it has allowed us to balance our budget. In 2020, these extraordinary taxing powers generated together approximately $12.4 million. That's $8.2 million in the extra EIT and $4.2 million in the elevated LST. And that equals to about 20% of the operating budget. Now, these taxes were set to expire in 2024 or 2025, depending on your reading of the law. And that would have resulted in a fiscal cliff that might have required draconian budget cuts, but now, quite happily, will be able to be avoided. And the state legislature has very recently amended its fiscal code to allow the city of Harrisburg to retain its earned income tax power indefinitely, and its full LST taxing power for another 10 years at triple the normal rate, which is what we have now. And I should note that by retaining that earned income tax now indefinitely, we will not have to go through a home rule process to achieve just that goal. Then after the 10-year period, the city will retain double the normal rate for the LST taxing power for another 5 years, so 15 years total for the extension of the LST. Importantly, this extends our revenues, our elevated revenues, through the remainder of the city's primary existing debt obligations. And we're going to talk about those tonight. They include the general obligation debt. They include what's called the forbearance liability, which we can talk about in greater detail in a moment. And it includes the stadium bonds. That 15 years pushes it out beyond all of those. Now, these changes to the fiscal code resolve the most serious long-term budget issue facing the city. And the benefit really can't be overstated for our taxpayers. This is really, really good news for Harrisburg. The city has solved the longstanding structural imbalance that our budget has had by securing revenues that will now be able to exceed our expenses, even despite what everyone understands is a limited tax base, with many aspects of Harrisburg not paying property taxes. I want to give special thanks to Harrisburg City Council. You all helped lead the charge for this and recognize this importance. Also, our representative, Patty Kim, our Senator, John DeSanto, Maverick Strategies, who developed the strategy that was successful, and I understand they'll be at the workshop next week, and all of the legislators that worked together to make this possible. So it is in that context, that positive context, we get to present tonight the 2021 budget and a little bit of a summary of our 5-year plan. It should be noted that the 2021 budget was developed in the context of the short-term COVID-related fiscal challenges and the long-term goal of achieving structural budgetary balance. Now, the city experienced significant revenue declines in 2020. Those projections are right now at almost $5 million less in revenues than we had in 2019. And we're budgeting only a modest recovery in 2021. $2.8 million in federal CARES Act relief from Dauphin County did offset a portion of those 2020 revenue losses. And general fund revenues are not projected to return to 2019 levels until 2024, with parking-related revenues lagging the most over that period. I want to make that clear. We are expecting a prolonged recovery to get us back to where we were in 2019. But we have a very strong fund balance position. It is projected right now to be at over $25 million by the year's end. And that is what is going to enable the city of Harrisburg to simultaneously cope with the pandemic while also pursuing our strategic initiatives. And everyone on council is to be greatly appreciated for all of our work collectively over the past years in building up that fund balance. The fact that we're going to begin drawing some of that down is exactly what a fund balance is for, to give us that cushion, that nest egg, to help us in the event of an emergency like we're experiencing with the current pandemic. Now, the 2021 budget includes appropriations for key strategic initiatives, such as bolstering public safety services. We're going to discuss those tonight, addressing key infrastructure needs, and importantly, reducing our debt obligations. The budget includes the use of $15.2 million of fund balance for debt repayments and other strategic priorities. But don't worry, since we have over $25 million, the city budget will still finish 2021 with a projected over $10 million fund balance, which is equal to 14% of our operating expenses, well above the fund balance policy of 5%. Now, on this next slide, and just take a moment to absorb it, we're going to talk about some of the financial forecasts and some of the key revenue assumptions we use not only in this budget, but as we're looking ahead. On the left-hand column, you see our revenue sources, beginning with real estate taxes. And then in the 2021 column, you're going to have a little bit of a philosophy of how we are estimating these moving forward. For 2021, we're going to be using an average. It's an average of not just 2020, but 2019 and 2018. We're anticipating the real estate taxes to return to the 2019 level real estate taxes in 2022, and then hopefully grow in 2023 and 2024. As you know, we still have a strong real estate market, And that's not where we're showing really some of the stress that we're seeing in some of our other revenues. Earned income tax and local services tax are using the same fundamental labor force and employment growth assumptions. We have the county employment rate, which is currently at 6.4%. We're assuming a gradual increase of that all the way up to 8% by December. And then potentially projecting 7.5% into 2021, down to 5% hopefully by 2022. And then an annual growth in the labor force beginning in 2022, no wage growth for 2019 and 2020, and 1% wage growth for 2021 and 2024. All of that goes into the mix. And I'm going to show you what that means on the next graph in terms of our projections for those revenues. Importantly, the mercantile business tax is where we're going to see a sharp decrease over what we've experienced in the past. Our 2021 revenue, we are reducing by almost 20% compared to our 2020 projections. We're going to hopefully see a gradual recovery to 2019 levels by 2023 and some growth afterwards, but it's going to take a while. And as we all know, our businesses, especially our small businesses in Harrisburg and elsewhere throughout the country, are really suffering and need our support this holiday season. Realty transfer tax, that is a flat $800,000. Parking taxes, we are looking at $3.8 million in 2021, going back to a 2019 level in 2022. But if I can draw your attention to the ground lease priority payments line, that's where we're really seeing a steep fall off. The ground lease priority payments are those parts of the waterfall that were designed in the parking system where money would flow to the city, provided the parking system was making enough revenues. The parking system is not making enough revenues currently, and we are not anticipating receiving anything in terms of ground lease or priority payments in 2021. Maybe there'll be a strong recovery over the summer. Maybe there'll be something towards the end of the year, but we're not projecting it. And we're going to project that that's going to be down again for 2022 and won't return to the contracted amount, which was projected in the strong plan really until 2023 or 2024. And I'll show you what that means on the next slide. And a little bit of a discussion of fees, and then the hotel fee, we're also projecting to be down maybe about half of what you would expect in a normal year in 2021. We're hoping, of course, for a vaccine and a strong recovery beginning in the spring and summer. But we are budgeting for about half of normal for the hotel fee tax. If we switch over to the next slide, which admittedly has a lot of numbers on it, so just take it in slowly, you're going to see the 5-year financial forecast plus the projected 2021 budget for each of those revenue sources that we just discussed. And if you look at the graph, you'll see the areas where we're showing the most stress. And you'll see that the earned income tax, we're looking at a budgeted amount of only about $12.3 million. That's down both from what we're projecting for 2020 and, of course, what we received in 2019. But it's really the mercantile business tax where you can see an even greater hit. Look, we're projecting only $2.8 million in the budget. That's down for what we're projecting in 2020. That's partly because business revenues sort of lag a year behind in terms of what's reported. We're not going to really understand the full effects of this pandemic until next year. So we're budgeting conservatively. And that's way down, over $1 million down from where we were in 2019. And then again, I'll draw your attention to that ground lease priority payment line. That is very significant. We're projecting 0 in revenue. And look where we were just as recently as 2019. Look where we are in 2020 at about 500,000. That was $3.5 million in 2019. We're projecting 0 in 2021, and it's going to be a long recovery for the Harrisburg parking system. We can have more of a discussion on that at a later time. But for the purposes of the budget, that's what we're projecting. You can see the hotel tax fee down there as well at about half of where we were in 2019. Now, importantly, this chart does not include the cash carryovers, otherwise known as the money that we're drawing down, that $15 million from the fund balance. If you add that in, that brings the revenue totals to closer to $80 million in total for the general fund. But the major reoccurring line items are all there in the graph. You can spend some time with that later, but I wanted to share that with you tonight. On the expense side, just so that everybody understands where we are there, we're looking for fire and ASME and management 2% across the board. We're not anticipating that changing very much. For the FOP, we entered into an agreement last year, which does not work like the other agreements. It is based on years of service and does not include a standard, elevating percentage rate on a yearly basis, which meant that last year we saw an initial uptick in costs, but we're not going to see that moving forward in 2021 and 2022. In other words, the salary for a first-year police officer doesn't change during the course of the contract, doesn't go up every year by a fixed percentage rate. And so as more people retire and more officers come in, we're going to continue to see a sort of savings there, although we did see a one-time increase in terms of our salary costs when we implemented that new schedule this year in 2020. We're going to talk about medical in just a minute, but the medical projection is 5% is what we're projecting in terms of the annual growth. But we are going to be seeing a significant savings that I'll talk about when we talk about our health benefits and the shift to Capital Blue Cross in just a minute. Supplies and services are in line with the 2% across the board for the regular pay scales, and capital expenditures for 2021 are pretty similar to what they were in 2020. And those are some projections out for future years as well. So then if you look at this slide, which has not just the budgeted amounts for expenditures for 2021, but also a little bit of a forecast, so you can put that in context, I want to draw your attention. Basically, the medical, not too different. The services, not too different. Supplies, not too different. And even debt service, they're not too different than what you've seen in 2021. The two major differences are, one, look at that personnel line. We're expecting to spend a significant amount, over $4 million more than what is being projected in 2020. And we're going to talk about that as a part of the budget presentation. And then if you look at that transfer line, that $5,750,000, that is part of a debt repayment that we're projecting to defease the stadium bonds, which I'll talk about in just a minute. So that's additional money that's going to debt reduction. So now let's talk about that debt reduction. And you will note that on the agenda for tonight, which is a packed agenda for sure, you have, among other things, a new term sheet with AMBAC, our bond insurer. And I want to walk you through that a little bit because it has budget implications. It's a single large payment that we're going to be projecting to make in the 2021 budget. So in July, the city and AMBAC re-engaged in discussions regarding the repayment of the forbearance liability in connection with the city's Series 1997 D and F bonds. You may recall you approved a term sheet prior to COVID that the city was planning to move forward with. When COVID struck, everyone paused to see the full effect. And again, in July, we sort of re-engaged with AMBAC, and they were amenable, I think, to giving us an even better deal. And we'll explain why that deal is better and why it works for Harrisburg moving forward. Now, considering the COVID pandemic and related fiscal uncertainty, the city did pursue a debt repayment strategy that would do two things. It would provide a balance of near-term and long-term debt service savings. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. The city and AMBAC have reached a new agreement, and it involves applying general fund balance to defease and repay existing stadium debt and forbearance debt, resulting in significant present value savings and recurring budget relief beginning in 2021. That's right, we're going to be able to see some budgeted relief in 2021. The settlement is part of a multi-year strategy to restructure the city's debt obligations, set the course for long-term structural budgetary balance, and maintain compliance with the adopted fund balance policy. Now, according to the city's financial advisor, That's Dan Connolly, who is on the line tonight. Extension of the city's EIT and LST taxing powers, which we just were able to achieve through the legislature, and how I began this presentation, is going to make refinancing, this is key, refinance the forbearance liability, a realistic possibility, and that could mean millions of dollars in savings. And I'm going to walk you through that and the budget implications as we move forward. All right, next slide. Now, I know this is complicated, and I know there are people at home watching this as well. And so this slide sort of takes us through our debt here at the city of Harrisburg, the general obligation debt, and as well as the forbearance liability debt. So if you look at the top of that slide, you'll see that we've got, about $15.9 million remaining of the general obligation debt. The good news is that that debt is done in 2022. And we've been on track. We've made all of our payments on that debt, and we are ready in just 2 more years to have that debt entirely paid off. That's not the debt we're talking about tonight. What we're talking about tonight includes what we're calling the forbearance liability. And the forbearance liability, in a nutshell, which is about $24 million, give or take a bit, that is the money that basically the city defaulted on and was unable to pay during the time of receivership, prior to my administration, when the city was on the brink of bankruptcy and ended up not being able to pay its bills. That money was it was agreed as part of the restructuring of the city that money would be paid back later, and interest would be charged. So the amended and restated settlement agreement sets forth a general fund payment schedule that requires the city to make semi-annual payments to AMBAC that begin in March 2023. And they specifically planned for the forbearance liability to not have to start being paid until after the general obligation debt matured in 2022. But that forbearance liability has been accruing interest ever since the city began accruing it, all the way back in receivership at 6.75%. And that is a significant amount of money, and we would like to reduce that liability. And on the next page, we also have the stadium bonds. And I have to say, I think it was a season of no baseball and no income coming from the stadium that made us really realize just what a potential risk the stadium bonds were for the city, because we have to make up the difference and make those payments. And why we might want to take those off the books. And that's what we mean by defeasing the bonds. We are proposing basically paying them off and having a benefit for paying them off. So if you look at the top of that slide, you'll see the outstanding amount left on those stadium bonds is about $5 million. They were used to upgrade the stadium. They currently don't mature until 2030, and they have a coupon rate there of 5 to 5.29%. And this is also an AMBAC enhancement. Now, the city has historically been making approximately $230,000 a year annual contributions from the general fund to make up debt service shortfalls under this guarantee. And that's because we don't get enough revenue via our stadium lease and the parking and all that goes on with that stadium to make those stadium bond payments. And as a result, we have to make up the difference. And in fact, in 2020, as I said, in the season when we didn't have any baseball, well, we made up that entire difference and we made the entire payment. And it's not entirely clear what the city's share would be moving forward. There's actually a sort of double whammy when it comes to minor league baseball. It's not just COVID, but there's also been a restructuring of the minor leagues that maybe baseball fans have been reading about, but it's not clear that the minor leagues are going to stay with at all as many franchises or even the same organization as they've had historically. So there's a total of about 6.494 million remaining in principal and interest on those bonds through their maturity. So here's what we're proposing. And I think it makes a lot of sense. We're proposing we defease those bonds, those stadium bonds. And in exchange for doing that, because it also, gets us out of that state, basically out of the stadium business, and it gets AMBAC out of the stadium business. And in exchange for doing that, they're going to give us a credit, a $1.919 million credit towards the reduction of that other debt, that forbearance liability. Sort of like a bonus. We're getting a value that we otherwise wouldn't have for those non-callable bonds by paying them off early. We're getting a 1.919 credit reduction right away to the forbearance liability. Now, in addition, they AMBAC in this term sheet, which you have introduced tonight, the city is allowed to make prepayments on the forbearance liability up to $4 million and receive a credit enhancement towards that amount that is currently due. So if we pay right away, we get 138%. So, and if we pay within a year of the effective date of this agreement, we'll get 130%. So that means for every dollar we pay early, we'd get $1.38 in value at the effective date, or $1.30 in value during the first year. AMBAC is also offering us a reduction in interest, and they're basically saying that we can reduce the interest for 3 years from the effective date from what is currently 6.75% to 5%. And then there's some terms that were part of the original deal. The original deal was just about paying the forbearance liability. It did not involve the stadium bonds, but now we're getting a benefit for doing the stadium bonds, so we're getting out of that sort of risky business. The forbearance liability repayment, basically prepayments apply to the payments furthest in the future. The city agrees to waive the ability to draw against it. If you recall, this whole deal was originally structured so that we could even borrow more money from AMBAC. It wasn't clear at the early years of the strong plan that the city would have such a strong fund balance position that we might need to borrow against this to be able to balance our budget. And we haven't had to do that, of course, but now we're saying we won't do that, which we can easily say. And if the city fails to make a payment on this moving forward at any time, then the interest rate would go up. Now, those are standard terms that we had in the last term sheet. What does all this mean? Well, assuming that we make a $2 million payment to AMBAC right away in 2021, and then another $2 million payment sometime, let's say in 2022, and we're just saying we're doing that because that's up to the $4 million that we are allowed and we would get the bonus benefit from. If you look at the left-hand side of the graph, that shows you what the existing circumstances are regarding our forbearance debt. You see in 2023, we're going to have to start paying $3.888 million a year. And that's going to continue on through 2032. Well, if we go ahead and defease those bonds, that's the 5.75 on the right-hand side, and we get the benefit from defeasing those bonds, that added reduction that AMBAC is going to give us, plus we pay the extra $4 million with the multiplier effect, you see that we end up only having to pay down through about 2029 instead of 2032. And you can see that basically we are going to achieve over the course of the entire payment structure over $12 million in benefit. And that has a present value of about $4.273 million. And if you're wondering what present value is the concept that money now is worth more than money in the future. And so while you can say that we're going to have a gross debt savings from the transaction if we move forward with it of $12.1 million, it's probably fair to calculate this in terms of present value savings, and that is closer to $4.3 million. Otherwise, either way, a huge benefit for the taxpayers. So the agreement will save $12.1 million in gross annual debt service. It could save $4.3 million in present value. And importantly, defeasing these stadium bonds eliminates one of the city's most inflexible liabilities while reducing the forbearance liability. That's really the great benefit. And the defeasance will, it should be noted, trigger the release of a debt service reserve fund in the amount of $658,000. that can also come back to the city. And the agreement has been included in the city's 5-year plan and part of its long-term strategy to reduce debt, maintain adequate liquidity, and secure its fiscal stability. It's really important that we put this, that we do this in the context, not just of the 2021 budget, which admittedly is a stressed year dealing with the aftermath and the continuing saga of COVID, but that we look at it in the context of what it's going to mean down the line for future years. And again, I can't stress enough that the extension of the EIT and the LST, which the legislature did last week, should allow the city now to refinance the remaining forbearance liability, which will allow us to maximize even additional savings. So what I showed you before had nothing to do with refinancing, but this graph does. So, and this just walks you through one scenario of how a refinancing could work. So if, again, if you look at the left-hand side, that's the existing. If you look at the right-hand side, you make you defease the stadium bonds for the 5.7, you make one initial payment of $2 million, and then you move to a refinancing. And the benefit of that refinancing is you can actually refinance the second $2 million payment. You can suddenly now reduce pretty significantly those annual payments. Even in the early years of 2023 and 2024, they would go from 3.88 million down to 2.6 million. And now this is just a scenario. It's not, it's just there really so that you could see what the type of scenario that you might be brought next year after we've had a chance to explore the markets and potentially come to you with a refinancing scenario. The scenario above assumes the refinancing of the forbearance liability in 2022. So not in 2021. 2021, we diffuse the bonds, make the initial payment, but in about a year's time after we got everything together, we refinance. It's just a scenario. It's assuming a 4.25 interest rate maturing in 2032 just to match the existing maturity. Neither of those aspects have to be necessarily that way, but for the purposes of trying to do apples to apples, we use those. And if executed within the 1 year of the effective date, the amended AMBAC settlement agreement, the city would receive that additional $600,000 credit. So that's the 1.3 multiplier. That's what you see there. That's part of the term sheet. And then the actual rates and terms will depend on market conditions, of course, and the city's ability to maintain its structural budgetary balance and a strong fund balance position, among other credit factors. But that is one possible scenario, and we wanted to bring that to you tonight. Why? Because look at this slide, and this is what would happen if we took that refinance scenario in 2022 and we did the additional debt payments that we were talking about, the defeasing of the bonds and the taking advantage of the terms which AMBAC is offering us. If you look at this, you see there's that $15.1 million change in fund balance in the box in the center of the graph. That would be for this year. That would bring our overall fund balance position down to about 14% as a percent of expenditure, still well above our fund balance policy. And it would allow us, after we got through COVID in 2021 and 2022, as part of this recovery that we're projecting, to begin anticipating actual surpluses and the growth of that fund balance again as early as 2023. So you have a time of stress, which is not unexpected for 2021. You spent a lot of money paying down debt in 2021, but we have it. We have those reserves. And then you begin to rebuild your fund balance, and you're in a very strong cash position moving out. That's why we're putting what we're doing in 2021 in the longer term context for everyone to see. So among the advantages to refinancing in 2022, if we can do it within 1 year of AMBAC, if you approve the term sheet, we get the deal done in 2021, and then we refinance early in 2022, again, you don't have to pay another $2 million out of fund balance. That could be wrapped into the financing, and that's what we're projecting as a part of the forecast. It allows us to preserve liquidity. That's a complicated graph. Take your time with it. We're going to have all this presentation posted on the website along with the budget. And Dan Connolly, our financial advisor, we'll be around to take questions when we have our budget hearings. I want to move next to discussion of health benefits, because one of the things I promised at the beginning was that we're going to see a real savings there. As you may know, the city of Harrisburg is going to be switching from Highmark to Capital Blue Cross effective January 1, 2021. This came after a very successful RFP process, and it offers the city a lot of advantages. Something we had not done for a number of years, certainly not since I had been mayor. We were very pleased with the responses that we got. It's a very competitive marketplace. It was a really good time to go out for an RFP. We've got financially sound 3-year competitive cost proposals. We have a discount guarantee, as well as some enhanced savings that the city of Harrisburg is going to be offered when people use UPMC Pinnacle. We are going to have a match of plan designs for all active employees and retirees, so there's not going to be any change in terms of people's expectations. And there's even an implementation budget, which is being granted to us to ensure that we have a seamless transition. Now, the next slide was prepared by our brokers on this, who sort of put this together. Hey, we've got a little bit of color here in the presentation. The top of the slide talks about additional savings that we're going to get from our prescription provider, Benecard. We're looking at cost savings there of over about a $500,000. But the bottom of the slide talks about the savings that we're going to receive over what we currently have by switching from Highmark to Capital Blue Cross. That is a total value savings of over $1 million. And we are also looking at if you look at the very bottom, that $200,000, that's the additional potential discount. It's not guaranteed, but it's an additional discount that we get based on our plan members using UPMC Pinnacle. And it's not pulled out of thin air. It's based on analysis of who's actually using UPMC Pinnacle. So the partnership between Capital Blue Cross and UPMC Pinnacle is one which could save the city additional monies, but it's at least $1 million. It could be $1.2 million. And we're going to see that over the course of next year. So that's a little bit about healthcare, and I'm sure you have questions about that, which we can talk about as well when we have the budget hearings. But here is the meat of the spending proposal, and I think we need to just take a moment to absorb this organizational chart, because one of the things that we were focused in, especially over the past months, was listening to the public and the feedback that we received from members of the public, and basically restructuring the police department so that there is more of an emphasis on community services. And we're proposing the creation of a new community services division, something which the Harrisburg Police Department does not have, helmed by a new captain, and a reorganization of the department so that under that community services division, you have the community policing team, SROs, if in the future we were to have them, your animal control officers, your new community service aides, and your HUD task force team. This is a major change with a new substation manager, a new community relations director, a new analyst, and above it all is a new emphasis on co-responders. And co-responders are those workers that are looking to try and address the mental health needs and other types of needs of our communities in a way that diverts people from the criminal justice system to begin with. This is a big change for the Harrisburg Police Department. I'll let you look more at that graph, and I'm sure you're going to have questions for our policing team when we have the budget hearings, but I wanted to introduce that to you now tonight. I want to walk through the new positions so that everybody understands them. Not only is there a new division, and we're calling the Community Services Division within the Harrisburg Police Bureau, but we are proposing the addition of 2 new members of the command staff, 2 new captains, one for community services and one for technical services. And we know who those individuals will be. They're Lieutenants Milo Hooper and Todd Abramitis, who would be promoted as a part of this organizational change. Other than those 2 positions, which are command staff positions, the rest of these positions that we're proposing, over $1 million in new positions, over $1 million are all civilian positions. They're all civilianizing the Harrisburg Police Department And we are proposing 21 new civilian positions for the Harrisburg Police Department in 2021. They include creating a new position for Blake Lynch, which is a promotion to what we're calling the Community Relations and Engagement Director for the department. The Community Policing Coordinator would remain, but this new director position would be established in part because somebody needs to be supervising and helping select and working to train our new community service aides. And this is, I think, the real centerpiece of the proposal, creating civilian positions, community service aides who can assist with quality of life issues and building relationships with the community in all of our different policing districts. And I thought we'd bring up the map next, which is the map of our policing districts, which has come up again repeatedly for conversation and discussion. We can go to the next slide. And it basically shows all the policing districts in Harrisburg. And if you recall, as part of Bill 8, you have created a review board which will have representatives of each of those districts on it. And this will line up to having community service aides that are representing each of those districts and acting as liaisons in part to the neighborhood groups in each of those districts. It's an exciting potential proposal. Community service aides would be new to Harrisburg, but they're not new to other departments. Lancaster has them as another third-class city. The West Shore has them. They can provide a lot of important capacity building, which the HPD doesn't have. And potentially, it could be a great career pathway for individuals who might want to consider a future career in policing, but aren't sure. Take high school graduates, maybe 18, 19, 20-year-olds who maybe would like to go to the police academy, aren't sure. Well, maybe they could apply to become a community service aide. And likewise, perhaps we can get retirees or others from the community. This would be the largest single creation of new positions, and these would be unionized positions paying a sustaining entry-level ASME wage with benefits. Largest creation of new positions all at once that we've seen at the city of Harrisburg. And I think it will be hugely transformative for the Harrisburg Police Department. So that is the community service aides. If we go to the next slide, we're also proposing 2 new co-responders. You saw them there at the top of the graph. These are folks that are trained in crisis intervention training and other types of de-escalation and other types of techniques. And they are able to provide appropriate resources for mental health and other drug-related and other types of service calls. The co-responder that we currently have in partnership with Dauphin County and currently paid for by Dauphin County has done a wonderful job for the city of Harrisburg. And we are looking to supplement, grow, increase our partnership and really expand that program so that we can have co-responders riding with all of the platoons. We can talk more about co-responders and their role and why it's a good idea as we move forward into the budget hearings. We're also looking to create some capacity building in terms of managers to do things like report and keep track of body cameras and other types of technical services which are really essential. I know there's a frustration sometimes on the part of council that it's hard to get the records or it's hard to get the data. Well, an RMS manager, that would be a records management systems manager. Body camera manager would be somebody who would be able to manage that data and provide that in a timely manner. We're also proposing a new crime analyst, again, a civilian crime analyst. This would be a second crime analyst, specifically an outward-looking crime analyst, one that would work with community groups to bring our full complement of crime analysts to 2. We have one crime analyst who works in the criminal investigation division, working on basically solving crime. This crime analyst would be a crime analyst that would work with community groups to help understand hotspots, to help develop strategies and work with those groups and do the type of public analysis that I think we'd like to see. We're also proposing a civilian substation manager. This is somebody who would allow and ensure for the continuous operation of the police substation in South Allison Hill. That substation is open. and we're currently staffing it with a temporary hire, but this would be the sort of permanent hire that's necessary to have those regular hours. And there would be community service aides and community police officers as well stationed there, but this would be a manager to sort of oversee that facility. And we're also proposing, and this is a lot of positions, but again, listening to the public, we are proposing one more parking enforcement officer. You may recall we added one over the course of this past year, which brought us our complement from 2 to 3. We really need 4, and it has to do with the way the parking enforcement officers work, the way they work in pairs, and 4 will allow us to do more booting and other types of things which are really necessary. I know it's a frustration to some in Harrisburg that, and obviously we've been pretty lenient with regard to COVID and everything else, but as we come back to some sense of normalcy, we've got to make sure we get our street sweeping done. We've got to make sure that we have fair and even parking enforcement in the parts of the city which are not monitored by standard parking. And that's why we're proposing a 4th officer. That's the personnel side of the policing budget. But we're also putting more money into community partnerships. And this is another thing that I've heard repeatedly over the past months. We need to do more to lift up our community organizations and create and sponsor the types of partnership which creates this important working relationship between Harrisburg and the communities we serve. One example of those partnerships, which is in the proposed budget, is we're proposing $103,000 for the South Allison Hill Safety Project. And this is a project which grew out of discussions over the summer between key community organizations in Allison Hill and the city of Harrisburg. I was there, the commissioner was there, others were there, trying to come up with a plan that, again, put some of the onus on the community itself, but put the requirement of funding on the city in a two-way partnership. And this is a partnership between Tri-County Community Action, which is going to be the fiscal agent, so they'll be the recipient of the grant, but also with a number of other organizations that we're working with them, including Light the Hill, Brethren Housing, Wild Heart Ministries, Tri-County HDC, the Housing Authority, and the Latino Hispanic Community Center. We're hoping that this project can serve as a model for other neighborhood organizations, and they're doing a sort of a 4-pronged approach. They're working on lighting, increasing security, addressing blight, and engaging the community all at once. And they've got a very extensive proposal that the city is going to help fund. It includes things such as providing LED bulbs for porch lights to make sure everybody has a working porch light, installing residential camera systems. They'll be doing that. We'll be contributing to those costs so that that footage is available if there's crime. They want to develop their own neighborhood watch app. We're supportive of that. They want to establish other types of partnerships and use our new crime analyst to work with them to address their community's needs in terms of crime mapping and understanding the crime that's happening in their own neighborhood. And we want to build that partnership. So that's just one example of community partnerships that are also being funded as a part of this new community services commitment. And then also, we want to put more resources into the public safety building itself. This is important. As you know, the McCormick Public Safety Center is an old building. It has a lot of needs. We recently replaced the roof, and we also have to do something to replace the original system. If we go to the next slide, you'll see a scary picture of sort of what it looks inside. And this is something which is important, especially in the time of COVID. Not only does the HVAC system that's currently in that building have sort of exorbitant costs, it's extremely expensive to run. It is original to 1957. Can you believe it? They keep it running on tape, and who knows how they do it. They can't even get the parts for this thing anymore. It does work, but it's on its last legs. And this is a complicated bit about filtration, but let's just say that with new air handlers in that building, we're going to be able to become compliant with new CDC COVID guidelines. And that means we're going to have safer air, and we're going to be able to protect our employees and give them a work environment which they deserve. So the health benefits are an important aspect of this. But what would happen if we had a catastrophic failure at any point, if this system were to break down? we'd have to evacuate the building, and it would be a major issue. So this is a $1 million project. Let's flip to the next slide. And this is the main sort of facilities project that we're proposing in the budget. This is something that was originally in the 5-year plan as a GESA, or a guaranteed energy savings contract. We've decided just to go the route of a straight bid on this and just pay for it directly. It's about $1 million project total, and we have applied to Dauphin County Gaming for a portion of those funds. It was very well received by Dauphin County, so I'm hopeful this will be our one of our funded projects for the upcoming year. Yeah, it requires replacing that cooling tower, which is on the roof of the building, the chiller in the basement, and all those air handlers. It's just sort of a three-dimensional graph of what the building is, but it's a major development for that building. And again, in this sort of post-COVID world, it's something that we really have to do. This is not the project for City Hall that we talked about last year, and we are currently awaiting the results of the RCAP program from the Commonwealth. We don't know if we've been awarded a grant to do that project, but that's something we talked about last year. This is something that we're proposing for next year, and it's for the public safety building. I'll note that all told, the personnel investments on the civilian side, the investments in the facility, and the investments in those community partnerships. While it's more money for policing, it's not more money for traditional policing. It's more money for community policing. It's not more money for our patrols or our patrol officers. It's more money to make the Harrisburg Police Department more reflective of the community it serves. And I think that's a great benefit of what we're proposing. I'm going to pause on that, and I'm sure we'll have a lot more discussion because that is the bulk of the spending in the budget. And I want to talk a little bit about another story which is being introduced to you tonight and has budget ramifications, and I think is a really terrific story for Harrisburg. And that is, if the public doesn't know already, the city of Harrisburg is going to be entering into intergovernmental agreements with the boroughs of Paxtang and Pembroke next year for solid waste and recycling. And these agreements are building on the successful intergovernmental agreement that we've had with Stilton Borough, and together represent over $2 million in new revenue sources that would be coming to the Harrisburg over the next 5 years. The intergovernmental agreements are introduced tonight as resolutions. We'll be discussing them and hopefully voting on them in December. Both boroughs voted to reject the bids of private companies and to go down the path of an intergovernmental agreement with the city. I think this is great news, not only for Harrisburg as a revenue source for us, but also for the region, because it is really an example of that type of regional cooperation, which I think we need to see, and I think which Pennsylvania especially needs to see with so many municipalities, so that we're all working together with the common goal of working for the benefit of our residents, our combined residents, especially in this region and area. As I say, Stilton's been very successful, and the residents of Paxtang and Pembroke have noted that in their decision to move forward. With those revenue projections, which are large, we can hire 6 new sanitation laborers and 1 new sanitation manager. So the second largest portion of growth in the budget is in the Public Works Department, first in police, second in Public Works. It should be noted, between the 12 new community service aides, which are ASME workers, and the 6 new sanitation laborers, which are also ASME, that's 18 new unionized, family-sustaining, full benefit positions at the city of Harrisburg. And we're able to do it in part due to the revenue of this intergovernmental agreement, at least those in sanitation. So this is great news. And while these workers may be working in Paxtang one day and Pembroke another day, it won't take up their entire schedule. And for those other days, they'll be able to serve the residents of Harrisburg. And we will get the benefit of increased capacity in our Public Works Department to do even more, not only in terms of sanitation, but also in our Parks Maintenance Division. Right now, we occasionally have to pull Parks Maintenance workers to work on the back of sanitation trucks, and we shouldn't have to do that once we hire these new sanitation laborers. just to walk you through one of the real benefits of the agreement here, it should be noted that for Paxtang and Pembroke, the city of Harrisburg does not have to bill the individual households. They do not do billing the way Steelton does and the way Harrisburg does. In fact, they do it the way Treasurer Dan Miller had actually recommended that Harrisburg do, which is that the boroughs themselves bill as part of the property tax every year, and they pay a yearly fee. But regardless of that, what it means is that we don't have to send bills to individuals. We send one bill to the borough of Paxtang, one bill to the borough of Pembroke, and there's no delinquency rate. We're going to get 100% of that bill. They pay us based on the number of households. In the Steelton portfolio, we've got a good collection rate. It's over 97%. It's performing extremely, extremely well. But all this is in the context of Harrisburg, because our own collection rate in Harrisburg is significantly lower. We're only at about 84%. We recognize this as an issue, and that's something that we're focusing on increasing as we move forward. And just as a matter of discussion, you should know that increasing the city collection rates by just 3%, if we just increased it, and we would still be 10% less than Steelton, we could enhance revenues by $500,000. So in this budget, and these are the last three positions that are really of significance in the budget, we are proposing hiring a new lien officer in the Law Bureau. You have Ms. Farron on tonight, who has done an excellent job of representing the city in court and working with delinquent payees at the city of Harrisburg to actually bring them into compliance. But this person would work with her as a lien officer to be actually filing and establishing those liens on a regular basis, and that is something which the city has not done continuously since the split with Capital Region Water since long ago. So a new lien officer in the Law Bureau and a new deputy tax and enforcement administrator in our Department of Tax and Enforcement. And together, those positions should pay for themselves and should allow us to improve our revenue collections more generally in the city. And now is the time to move on those. We're also proposing, and there should be some more discussion about this, and I'm sure there will be, we're also proposing one major new position in communications. And we want to hire a multilingual community services coordinator. And we think that person could be very beneficial in helping us communicate with the public. And there can be more on that to come when we have the budget hearings. We're moving along, and I know there's a lot of material here that we've covered already, but I do want to discuss economic development just a bit. We have a very active economic development department headed by Nona Watson, and it is we have just put together a new partnership with the Chamber and CREDIC to launch round 2 of the Neighborhood Business Stabilization Program. And I'm going to take advantage of this forum to announce to the public that window is going to open on December 1st, 9 a.m. in the morning. That'll be 1 week from today. And we are going to be able to award grant funds again to businesses that are struggling financially as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. This is businesses in the city of Harrisburg. It's intended to provide emergency operating funds for neighborhood businesses that are closed or have had their foot traffic significantly reduced. Eligible activities include rent, mortgage, utilities, payroll, real estate taxes, and outstanding vendor invoices. A little different than round 1, which was a partnership with Impact Harrisburg. Round 2 is a partnership with CREDIC and is using a different source of funds. We're using actual CARES Act funding in this instance, and we've increased the total amount which eligible applicants can receive from up to $10,000 for this round. Now, if you received a grant in round 1, that does not disqualify you from getting a grant in round 2, but these grants are going to work a little differently. This is going to be a forward-looking reimbursement grant. So this is going to be going to businesses who will then be able to use it to pay the rent in January and February and March, or to pay the utility bills in January and February and March. And they will have to submit those receipts to draw down on the money. the previous grant did not work as a reimbursement grant. It was basically just to stabilize businesses and help them to get through the initial stages of the pandemic. But this is a grant that is designed to help businesses make it through until the spring and summer, when we expect we'll hopefully have a vaccine and hopefully have a much safer business climate. So this is a big deal. It is not directly using general fund money, but it is using CDBG money. And I wanted to make it clear that that is launching here. And we can go to the next slide, because it's one of a number of programs that are going to be launching here in the near future. And the one that is in the budget and is for your consideration that we'd also like to launch for an early next year, as early as possible, is going to be a micro enterprise grant program. And what we basically like to do is provide technical financial support for the establishment of very small businesses. We'll call them micro enterprises, businesses of 5 employees or less. And through the program, we want to award up to $20,000 in grant funds to eligible business startups. And we're going to use money that is going to be a continuing source moving forward. We hope for our economic development issues in the hotel tax, which will hopefully drive more people to the city of Harrisburg by increasing our business offerings. So this is designed for those businesses that maybe were going to start up but decided not to start up during the pandemic. Businesses, we know we're going to need to be trying to make as much of a positive environment for businesses to get on their feet when we make it through to the spring and summer. And this is a potential help for those businesses which are in the early stages of their development. And this will be a program that will be administered by our economic development team, and Nona and Jamal can speak to you about it more as we go forward. Also want to talk about at least one more program. There's actually 2 more. You can go to the next slide, which are coming out of our building and housing team, also using federal funding. We are going to be launching this month a new rental relief program, which is going to use some of our COVID fundings for rental assistance. And this is something which can not just go to businesses, but can go to individuals as well that need rental assistance during this difficult time. Within the context of economic development, it is something which, unlike the the Neighborhood Stabilization Business Program that we just discussed, this is not something which would be a reimbursement in a forward-looking sense. This is something that could be going towards back rent. So if you are a resident of the city and you're in arrears with your rent, then you can apply for this program. If you qualify, you can then have your rent arrears paid off, and we would be paying the landlord directly for that. Similarly, if you're a small business that would qualify, you could use this to pay for your arrears. And this is using ESG funds. We're also have a new program coming out for food assistance that's going to be using CDBG COVID funding to help those make it through to the end. Again, more stimulus to try and get us through this pandemic and get to a time where we can really begin hopefully seeing our businesses grow and return to the growth we were seeing back in 2019. Also, as a part of our economic development program that we're going to be launching here, and as we're moving forward, I want to talk just briefly about the 4 pieces of affordable housing legislation that we are launching tonight and introducing to council. Those are the bills you'll find on your agenda that we're all saying are part of our affordable housing program. I want to thank Councilwoman Bowers, Madsen, and President Williams specifically for working with us on moving forward legislation that we think will have a positive impact in addressing the lack of affordable housing that we see in the city of Harrisburg. But the first approach to this is we want to create what we're calling Title 12, which is an actual affordable housing program. And that's the establishment of a program to encourage the development of affordable housing. It's providing criteria and standards on how you can participate in the program. It's defining the program, and it's an essential part of addressing the problem. You've got to define what it is that we want to see and how we're going to describe it. Then there's a series of 3 bills. The first is a zoning amendment. And all 3 of these bills work in terms of trying to incentivize affordable housing. We don't want to use a mandate for affordable housing in a way that might discourage development. We want to encourage development by rewarding those developers that are addressing the affordable housing crisis. And basically, we're going to use as a part of that what's a concept called a density bonus. And a density bonus basically means if you are an affordable housing project as properly defined, you're going to get some relief. You might be able to build more units or taller units or have some parking relief. All of these things as benefits that you otherwise don't have under the zoning code if you're a certified affordable housing project. That's part of the proposal. And on the next slide, you can see that we also want to amend the current LRTA bill. And the current LRTA bill, which is now 5 years old, so it's appropriate, I think, to revisit as we move forward. It was supposed to incentivize all sorts of investment in construction throughout the city by allowing a tax abatement for qualifying projects. We've seen a lot of rehab, and we've seen, but we have not seen a lot of new construction. In fact, we haven't seen any new construction under the LRTA program in Harrisburg. So in an effort to try and develop some new construction in Harrisburg, we were trying to make it easier to qualify for that LRTA for the full 10-year tax abatement by basically saying, if you're a qualified affordable housing program, which means you've got at least a quarter of your planned developments is defined as affordable, you're going to be able to get that benefit of the tax abatement without the qualifying conditions that have been hard to meet and which have, I think, held back new construction. It's just undeniable in that we haven't had the new construction that we'd like to see. So it's an attempt to redefine the LRTA to privilege new construction of affordable housing. And then number 4, and this is something we've talked to council about repeatedly. I think you're going to vote on a street vacation tonight. You've got another one being introduced. It happens all the time. We want to develop criteria for you to help evaluate street vacations and for everyone, so that developers know what the criteria is. And at the heart of that is that we want there to be a public good associated with the request for a street vacation. And one of the ways that this was part of the affordable housing package is we will define an affordable housing project as meeting that public good benefit. So there'll be other ways to meet the public good benefit, but an affordable housing will automatically work for the purposes of the public good necessary for the street vacation. Now, I know we're not going to get to all 4 of those bills this year. We're introducing them now because we've been working on them all year, and we know there's urgency in establishing them. But we can begin the conversation now, and we will see them hopefully become law in the new year. And I look forward to working with council on all of that. We're almost there. I just wanted to talk briefly about the M&T building. This is something which council, we have discussed in session. We did allocate the money to purchase the building, but just so the public is clear, this is the building on 7th Street. M&T is allowing us to purchase that building at a greatly reduced rate from what it would be on the open market. We have in the budget the costs of fixing up that building. It's only about $192,000, and it is going to become the new home of our engineering and traffic departments. There are some extra office spaces, and there has been discussion about the possibility of having community service aid or a community policing component to this building, and that is very much a possibility and something we can discuss moving forward. But one definite undeniable benefit to the community services division is that with engineering moving out of the McCormick Public Safety Building, that whole office area directly across from the commissioner's office, that is going to become home to our community services unit based in the downtown building. And then they will have satellite offices in the neighborhood substation, potentially the M&T Bank building as well. So a much more elevated profile and first new bit of real estate acquisition, I guess, for the city of Harrisburg since the Public Works facility. And again, if people are watching this and they're wondering why, we are losing a portion of our Public Works facility to eminent domain as a part of the 83 expansion. And this is going to allow us to move the traffic shop and some components of that out of the building and into a central area there, right on 7th. All right, as the final series of slides, we're going to talk a little bit about the capital projects that we have in store for 2021. And I didn't want to do this in the same way that we've done it every other year. Yes, we can go and talk about the projects in detail. We can do that during the budget hearings. But I thought we'd put together a schedule so that you and the public could understand what we're going to see in sort of each season of the new year in 2021. Because there's going to be more construction in 2021 than we've ever seen in Harrisburg, at least in anyone's memory. In the winter, we're defined as January, February, and March. You're going to see the beginning of projects that we've talked about for a long time. You're going to see the beginning of construction for the 2nd Street multimodal project. You're going to see the beginning of construction for the 7th Street multimodal project. You're going to see the beginning of construction for Mulder Square. You are going to see the beginning of construction for the 6th Street accessible route. And if you're not as familiar with that one, that is an improvement, especially around the area of 6th and Emerald. And I think, as some of you know, that we recently had a tragic death at that intersection of 6th and Emerald. And we're looking to improve the ramps and the sidewalks along there. And it's just sort of phase 1 of the improvements of 6th Street that are growing out of some of the investment that we're seeing in the courthouse and the state archives. Also, at the bottom of the graph, you're going to see the start of construction for the 3rd Street sidewalk program. That's that skinny sidewalk near the Capitol that is becoming ADA accessible for the first time. And the Hearst Street underpass construction, which is really repaving and resurfacing of that whole road, Hearst Street, all the way from Cameron to 7th Street. So a major connection. All told with these projects, if you look at the facts on the left hand, we're going to have 385 ADA ramps alone just being constructed in 2021. I'm not going to go into a great deal on those projects because we've talked about them before. We had wanted to start some of them even as early as this year, but they're all coming together, and you can see that schedule. They're all moving into a February, March construction beginning for next year. Also on that graph, there are 5 projects that are in the sort of design phase, and those include the State Street Rapid Response, the Capitol Gateway, which is the Forster Street improvements, the Allison Hill paving project, the East-West connection, which is the 2nd and Walnut intersection, and the Courthouse connection, which is the urban meadow in the area around Riley Street. Just a couple of notes on those. The State Street Rapid Response and the Capitol Gateway response are the 2 areas on our high entry network that have received the most attention. Both of those projects are going to be locally delivered, but they're going to be bid by PennDOT, and both of those are being funded in part by PennDOT. So we're very, very pleased by that. The one that we don't have a funding source yet is the Courthouse Connection project. That one we have applied for funding, and we'll see if we receive it. And the East-West connection, the 2nd and Walnut improvements, I want to direct people to the survey, which they can find at vision0hbg.com, where they can see some design proposals. That one's going to stay in design for all of next year, and we want feedback and we want input. So go to vision0hbg.com. So that's starting in the winter, and as we move into the spring, you see the construction continuing. You see the State Street Rapid Response should start being constructed there in the spring. So it moves from design to construction, as does Allison Hill paving. We haven't talked about Allison Hill paving, but we've put forth in this budget $1.6 million for paving neighborhood streets in Allison Hill. And that's going to be a major investment, much needed. In terms of another interesting fact here, all told, all of these projects, 60,000 square feet of sidewalk is being constructed in 2021. You're going to see this all over Harrisburg. Then if you move from spring to summer, you begin to see some completion of some of the projects. The skinny sidewalk is gone on 3rd Street. The Hurst Street underpass is completed, and the other projects are moving. You've got over 4 miles of roadway, all toll, which is being paved. You continue then into the fall of 2021, where we hope to have completed 7th Street, completed the State Street Rapid Response, completed the Allison Hill paving, and begun the bidding process on the Capitol Gateway, which is the Forster Street from Front Street to 2nd Street, which would actually become a 2022 project. And note that the 2nd Street multimodal is going to continue into 2022. You're not going to see the actual resurfacing of that street in 2020 until 2022 as the final step. But you are going to see 2nd Street two-way occur in 2021, and the establishment of the roundabouts, the pedestrian islands, and the raised intersections, all of those Vision Zero aspects. Those roundabouts are at Riley and Rebec and Kelker, and the raised intersection is at 2nd and Radnor. You're also going to see the establishment of those speed cushions. So all of that is going on in 2021. It is going to be an exciting time to be in Harrisburg, and you're going to see development, really infrastructure investment throughout the whole city. And I want to end on this map, which I like a lot, because this map shows where we've come, how far we've come since about 2015. When I first took office, we didn't have any money for anything. We had a stack of unpaid bills. We had no savings. We had no money to invest. We couldn't borrow. This is a map of all the investments that we made, starting with that South 17th Street paving. I remember that initial press conference in 2015, and going all the way through what we just discussed, we're planning for 2021. And contrary to some perceptions, it really does show that we have spread those dollars out throughout the city. And you can see paving in every corridor of Harrisburg. We're looking at over $33 million all told in construction dollars that we've spent, or we will have spent by the end of next year, on infrastructure in Harrisburg. And that's a long way that we've come from a time when we didn't have any resources or any money. And that's money that's come from grants, it's come from liquid fuels, and it's come from the savings that we've built up and reinvested. So I think it's something to be really proud of, and it's a legacy that we can build on. Nearly $35 million, and that doesn't include engineering that or other types of design costs. That's really just the actual money that we've put into the streets and roads of Harrisburg. So we'll just end on the final slide, which, as in past years, sort of announces when the budget hearings are scheduled for those that want to participate, ask questions, give feedback. Looking forward to receiving your questions, looking forward to having an opportunity to respond to those. And we'll have all of our department directors and all of our teams available to speak to you on December 8th and December 9th, heading towards that special legislative session and hopefully a vote on Thursday, December 10th. I want to thank you all for patiently working with us as we went through that presentation. I know it was a lot of materials, Madam President, but it's an important budget, and I think deserving of the time to have gone through it. So thank you for your patience.
I'm sorry, you're welcome, Mayor, and we're not going to go through the question period. I'm sure a lot of council members, it's a lot of information to dissect. So we will have those questions available for you sometime next week. And of course, I have several questions, especially when you talk about the different corridors in the city of Harrisburg. And you mentioned one area, the uptown area. So you and I certainly will have to look into that. I don't see anything on the projected vision that you gave us to see anything in the uptown area. You mentioned everything else, every other section. Six and Emerald, you're going to do ramps, but we've done ramps in the uptown corridor for the last 3 or 4 years. But we need to focus on doing some constructive work there in that particular area in the uptown. So I will furnish those questions to you, and I will have them to you by next week. Council members, is there anything specific that you want to ask the mayor before? And I really don't want to get into a lot of questioning, but is there anything that you want to ask them? Just one thing specific regarding his presentation?
I just have a scheduling question. Thank you for providing those dates to the public. Will we receive the order of presentations from each department?
Yes, and that's up to you. And I'm sure Council President will communicate, or Chair Allett will communicate the order that they would like. Obviously, there's a major investment and a large discussion to be had for policing that could probably take up, a couple nights in and of itself. So we'll have to figure that out. But our department directors are available at your call.
Thank you.
Mr. Allett, could you give an update of how we're going to do the budget this year?
Yes. So just for council members' perspectives, please review the budget. If you haven't made arrangements to get your actual paper bound, if you requested that, there is the link online to be able to review it. We'd like questions back by December 1st at noon to be able to submit to the administration. That will help me dictate a little bit of the schedule for the budget hearing. We count on a packed evening on the first evening because I want to make sure we can cover as much ground as possible, knowing that we only have a second evening then available. So usually what we've done in the past is we've covered the questions from council first, and then we've moved into departmental responses. I suspect we will do the same as we get in and review the budget. Keep in mind, just based on the mayor's presentation, there was a lot in there tonight that didn't necessarily have to do with what's in the budget. For instance, things that are coming out of HUD or federal funds aren't in the budget. So don't be waylaid and thinking, I have to ask all these questions about that. That's actually not in the budget. So keep that in mind as you're reviewing the information. So focus in on the sections and the changes. I'll put together a schedule. Probably once we get the questions back, I might have a general idea of how we will structure the evening, but I will let everybody know, obviously, and let the administration know in terms of how we're going to proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Alley. Okay, council members, before we move on to courtesy of the floor, we have Ms. Farron waiting to be interviewed. So I would like a motion to suspend the rules and so we can interview her and then have her be able to go home for the evening. Have a motion?
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you very much. Ms. Farron, are you there?
I am, President Williams. How are you this evening?
I'm wonderful, thank you. Please just give us an overview of your particulars, your educational background, your work ethics, please.
Sure. So I grew up in Western Pennsylvania. After a year of college, I joined the United States Army. While I was in the Army, I met some colleagues that were in JAG. That's where my interest for going to law school really started. I finished my major in political science pre-law. While I was doing that, I did an internship with the Department of Defense in Roslyn, Virginia. I toured all of the law schools in the Harrisburg area. I'm sorry, in Pennsylvania. And when I came to Widener in Harrisburg, I really liked the proximity to the Capitol. I really liked the ability to be close to government. I knew that I wanted to do something in the public sector. I wasn't sure if that was going to be at a nonprofit or for a government agency, but that's kind of where I started my law career, was having that public sector vision. So while I was in law school, I interned at the Pennsylvania Department of Health, at the Public Utility Commission, and the Cumberland County District Attorney's Office. So since I've graduated law school, I've primarily focused in government work and nonprofit. I worked at the Pennsylvania Department of Education, as well as the YWCA of Greater Harrisburg. So I've been in the Harrisburg area since 2013, whenever I started law school.
So you're familiar with the city of Harrisburg.
Yes.
One of the areas that I know that you will be assisting the legal office in is to looking at collections. How do you plan on seeing that? Stilton for us is 97%, and Harrisburg only gives 84% as far as the collection to the revenue for sanitation. How do you propose to collect those type of, or make it even up to 97% as Stilton?
Sure. So one of the biggest projects I've been working on is trying to standardize how I approach an account. So I've been working with the Tax and Enforcement Office, and we started adding in delinquent trash to landlord complaints. And we have been successful on some of those. Some of the larger ones, we are looking to file liens at Dauphin County Courthouse or pursue other ways to collect that money. But really what right now I'm working on is making sure that we are billing the owners. It's something that, our ordinance provides that the bill would be in the owner's name. And we have old accounts who that are in the tenant's name. So we've had some trouble tracking down the ownership, which is an issue for filing liens. So you have to do a lot of front end work. The actual lien process is pretty straightforward and does not cost the city a lot of money. It's $15 to file the lien, but the work that goes into drafting the lien and making sure that all of your details are correct is really where you see the hours being logged. So what I'm trying to do is streamline a process so that when the lien officer comes on, or whenever tax enforcement office is helping the law bureau, that if you picked up a file of mine, you would know exactly where I was with a particular property, and all of the same research is being conducted on each property, and we're taking the same approach to each one to be able to have that money collected.
Okay, so this method of collection that you are looking, to do, would that be focusing on the business, the residential, or?
So really, my list right now is 4 or 5 tracks. I have 10 of the largest commercial properties, and by largest, I mean most delinquent. I have information that comes in directly from Public Works. They will send me interoffice mail accounts when they're doing different things. Maybe somebody that for whatever reason they were looking up their account, so they send me delinquencies. The tax office has been flagging delinquencies.
Okay.
So it's really where the information is coming from that my list grows as people send me. So that's kind of where we've started with the input from really everybody in the city.
Okay, you've been here since July. Have you been successful in this method, utilizing this method?
So the tax office and I have gone to the MDJ's office twice now and have obtained judgments against 5 or 6 people in connection with landlord licensing issues and trash. And I've been able to file some liens for properties that were pending sheriff's sale. And I just sent out my first batch of first notices to people yesterday. It was 15 account holders, but several of those had several properties to them. So this is really the beginning of all the different efforts that we've, kind of created and come to a process for the Law Bureau.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Farron, and welcome aboard.
Thanks.
I look forward to working with you and to seeing how successful you have come in the next 3 to 6 months.
Thank you very
I'm
much.
going to now turn it over to my council members, my colleagues. I will start with Ms. Bowers.
Good evening, Emily. I don't have any questions. It's nice to meet you. Put a face to your name. I know we have talked on the phone, so welcome to the city of Harrisburg, and I look forward to continue working with you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ms. Bowers. I will go next to Ms. Green, please.
Thank you, President Williams. Well, welcome aboard. Welcome to the city of Harrisburg. It's nice to meet you. I don't have any questions at this time. I look forward to your continued work. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Mr. Mattson.
No questions for me. Thanks. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to Mr. Allett.
No questions for me at this time. Thank you.
Mr. Majors.
Thank you. I think President Williams, I think many of the questions I had, you asked, I mean, especially regarding trash and how we're looking to handle a lot of the delinquent accounts. I know that there's been some discussion on how we're going to move forward on collections. But I think, Emily, based on what you've expressed so far and the work that you're doing, is tackling one of the major issues that many of us had concerns with when we were exploring other ways to address trash in the city, right? So, one of the proposals that was out there was to move to what some other communities are doing, but our focus was going to be on residential, and we knew commercial properties were. We had several large commercial properties that owed us. That were, I guess, in arrears for significant amounts of money. So the work that you're doing now could help us, improve that collection rate on the commercial side, and we'll work on some other methods and ways to handle things on the residential side. So thank you for the work that you're doing. Look forward to working with you as we make some additional changes there, and I'm glad to see that, and we'll be in contact on how those collections are going on the commercial side. So thank you, and thank you, President Williams, because I went down my list and I think everything was covered. So thank you.
You're welcome, Mr. Majors. Ms. Daniels?
You all asked most of the questions. You did answer this, but I didn't catch it. How many years of legal experience do you have?
Sure. So I graduated law school in 2016. So 4 years.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Farron, and we will certainly vote on you to put you legally on the payroll for the city of Harrisburg.
Thank you very much.
You are so welcome. Have a motion to go back into the business,
So
and second, Mr. Allett or Mr. Majors?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. At this point, I would ask for Mr. Petrosky to please call the vote for Resolution 84 for Emily Farron to be the Assistant City Solicitor for the City of Harrisburg in the Legal Department.
We have to make a motion to bring it up from the floor, I think, don't we?
Yeah, I did. I did bring a motion.
Would you like me to read Resolution 84 into record?
Yes, to bring it, yes. Up from the floor, that's what I'm asking for, Mr.
Okay. So who's making the motion to bring it from the floor?
I can make the motion to bring Emily Farron for, which is Resolution 84, Assistant City Solicitor for Collections for the Legal Department for the City of Harrisburg.
Get a
Is that a
second.
second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any questions or comments on the motion?
Just a question, I guess it's for the Law Bureau. This would bring the total complement to how many in the Bureau?
It is then going to be, it's 4 of the 5 budgeted positions for attorneys.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Majors. Any additional questions or comments? Hearing none, Mr. Petrosky, please call the vote.
First, I'm reading in the record. Resolution 84 is a resolution confirming the appointment of Miss Emily A. Farron, Esquire, to serve as the Assistant City Solicitor for the City of Harrisburg's collection matters.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments? Please call the vote, Mr. Petrosky.
Mr. Allett,
Yes.
Ms. Bowers,
Yes.
Ms. Daniels,
Yes.
Ms. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Madsen,
Yes.
Mr. Majors,
Yes.
Ms. Williams.
Yes,
So
thank you.
Resolution 84 passes.
Thank you very much. Congratulations, Ms. Farron.
Thank you so much. I look forward to working with all of you.
You're welcome. Thank you. You have a good evening and especially a happy and safe holiday.
Thank you. You as well.
Moving on, council members, to courtesy of the floor. Mr. Petrosky, do you have any public comment at this point?
Yes, we have one public comment submitted by Brandon Basom. I'm writing again to call for the city to make public its contract with the Harrisburg Bureau of Police. It is astounding and unprofessional that has been kept from the residents for this long. What is the Harrisburg Police Department trying to hide? Is the expectation that a new contract will be negotiated and approved without the input and consent of the people of Harrisburg? For all the talk by city officials wanting our engagement and help, there doesn't seem to be much desire to give us what we need to do either of those things.
Okay, Mr. Johnson, you said we don't have any additional comments?
That's all.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, council members. Moving on to approval of minutes. Approval of legislative session minutes on November 10th, 2020. Is there any corrections, deletions, or omissions? Hearing none, minutes will stand approved. We now move on to reports of committees. Report from Chair Allett on the work session of November 17th, 2020. Mr. Allett, are you ready with your report?
And thank you, Council President.
I
For
can
discussion-
hardly hear you, Mr. Allett.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Up for discussion at the work session on November 17th of 2020 was a resolution 83 of 2020, which is a contract with Inservico to provide third-party administrative services for general liability and related claims. It is a 3-year contract that would end on September 30th, 2023. And the overall contract seems to be an improvement based on the services we had previously. And so I'd recommend my colleagues to vote in affirmation on this for a vote later this evening. Thank you.
You're welcome, Mr. Allett. We now move to report from Chair Bowers on the work session of November 17th, 2020. Ms. Bowers, are you ready with your report?
Yes, thank you, President Williams.
You're welcome.
On Tuesday, November 17th, 2020, the Building and Housing Committee met during the council work session to discuss Resolution 89 of 2020. Resolution 89 of 2020 is a resolution authorizing the city to negotiate and enter into a master certified local government grant agreement with the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission, providing for eligibility to apply for grants through the Certified Local Government Grant Program for projects that support the city's historic preservation program. Mr. Frank Grumbine, Historic Preservation Specialist and Archivist, spoke on behalf of the administration. Mr. Grumbine provided an overview of the grant agreement. Mr. Grumbine shared that the agreement simplifies grant awards and scholarships that the city would apply for through the PHMC. The grant range is between $100 and $25,000. The agreement will end on December 31st, 2024. Mr. Grumbine shared a few opportunities that the city could utilize the potential grant funding for, including the city's historic district guidelines and an inventory of historic resources in each of the historic districts. This concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Bowers. Moving on, reports from Chair Mattson on the work session of November 17th, 2020. Mr. Mattson, are you ready with your report?
I am, President Williams. On Tuesday, November 17th, the Community and Economic Development Committee met to discuss Resolution 87, a resolution approving the preliminary final subdivision and land development plan submitted by Tara Castile on behalf of TLC Work-Based Training Programs, Inc., to construct 8 residential units on a vacant lot at 440 Kelker Street. The committee received an overview of the land development plan by Planning Director Knight. The project is in compliance with all city regulations and ordinances. The applicant went over the plan as well. The committee asked questions. Overall, the feedback was positive from my colleagues, and given that there was positive feedback and the project is in compliance, I would encourage everyone to vote in the affirmative of this resolution. And that is it. That is it for my report.
Thank you, Mr. Mattson.
Thank you.
Moving off to report from Chair Majors on the work session of November 17th, 2020, and also the public hearing on November 23rd, 2020. Mr. Majors, are you ready with your report?
Yes, I am, President Williams. On November 17th, the Public Works Committee met to consider Resolution 77 of 2020, a resolution approving the disposition of surplus equipment and vehicles which have exhausted their useful life for city operations by the Bureau of Vehicle Management. We received a presentation from the Bureau. So it is a total of 22 vehicles that have gone beyond their useful life for city use and will be up for auction, as well as several pieces of equipment. I'm actually looking at the list here now. Several pieces of equipment that as well have exhausted their useful life that will be auctioned off. by the city, and we asked for asked for my colleagues to vote in the affirmative of of Resolution 77. Additionally, we heard a presentation from the Harrisburg Environmental Advisory Committee, the EAC, which they gave an overview of the work that they have been doing throughout the year of 2020, which includes additional grant funding and availability to upgrade our greenhouse so that we'll actually be able to produce food and provide for educational and training opportunities for residents in the city of Harrisburg, as well as some other grant opportunities that they're working with in conjunction with Harrisburg University. Next, yesterday, November 23rd, we held a public hearing to hear Bill 13 of 2020, an ordinance vacating and striking from the official map of the city of Harrisburg rights of way, Grocers Alley, and a part of Kent Alley in the block bounded by 1820 North 5th Street, North 5th Street, Kelker Street, and Fulton Street, pursuant to Chapter 3-109 of the codified ordinance of the city of Harrisburg. Mr. Knight gave an overview of the project on behalf of the city, as well as Dan Weiss was there representing Tart Castile, who is developing the project. Capital Region Water believed we got standard language from Capital Region Water as long as all of the conditions are met. The Planning Bureau and the Planning Commission all are in support of the lot consolidation. There were a few questions from residents, not at this meeting, but previously, regarding to ensure that parking in that area with the addition of this new project that is being proposed in conjunction with this street vacation can be done without having an adverse impact on parking in that area. Those issues were addressed by the applicant, and I am asking that my colleagues vote in the affirmative on Bill 13 of 2020, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Majors. We now move on, council members, to ordinance for first reading. Mr. Petrosky, please read Bill 14 of 2020 into record.
Bill 14 of 2020 is an ordinance establishing the budget for the municipal government of the city of Harrisburg for the year 2021.
That will be placed in Budget and Finance Committee. Moving on to Bill 15.
Bill 15 of 2020 is an ordinance amending the codified ordinances of the city of Harrisburg, Title 5, Licensing and Taxation, Part 5, Real Estate Taxes, Chapter 5-501, Property Tax, by establishing for the year 2021 a tax levy on land and improvements, and providing for the distribution of taxes levied and assessed, or providing for a tax rebate for the difference between the tax due and attributable to the year 2021 tax levy over the tax due and attributable to the year 2006 tax levy for qualifying senior citizens.
That also will be placed in Budget and Finance Committee. We now move on to Bill 16.
Bill 16 of 2020 is an ordinance amending the codified ordinances of the city of Harrisburg, adding thereto Title 12 entitled Affordable Housing Program, establishing incentives for the development of affordable dwelling units through the use of affordable housing development certifications and agreements, authorizing the promulgation of rules and regulations to establish and maintain affordable housing programs, and opposing fines and penalties for willful non-compliance with program requirements and agreements.
That will be placed in Building and Housing Committee. Moving on to Bill 17.
Bill 17 of 2020 is an ordinance amending Part 3 of the Title 7 of the Zoning Code, the city of Harrisburg, to provide certain zoning relief for developments which contain affordable housing dwelling units in the city of Harrisburg, to encourage the development of affordable housing throughout the city of Harrisburg.
That also will be placed in Building and Housing Committee. We now move on to Bill 18, please.
Bill 18 of 2020 is an ordinance amending Part 1 of Title 9 Streets and Sidewalks, and adding thereto Chapter 9-117 entitled Street Vacations, and providing standards thereto, requiring the submission of proposed land development plans or lot consolidations in conjunctions with a petition to vacate a street, incorporating a public good proposal requirement for each petition, in furtherance of the development of affordable housing, declaring the development of affordable housing associated with the application to vacate a street to be a qualifying public good.
That also will be placed in Building and Housing Committee. We now move on to Bill 19.
Bill 19 of 2020 is an ordinance amending Title V, Chapter of the Licensing and Taxation Code to provide real estate tax incentives to encourage the development of affordable housing programs throughout the city of Harrisburg.
That also will be placed in Building and Housing Committee. Moving on to Bill 20.
Bill 20 of 2020 is an ordinance vacating and striking from the official map of the city of Harrisburg rights of ways within the block bounded by the Boyd Street Urban Meadow, North 4th Street, Riley Street, and Logan Street within the block bounded by Harris Street, North 4th Street, the Boyd Street, Urban Meadow, and Logan Street pursuant to Chapter 3-109 of the codified ordinances of the city of Harrisburg.
That will be placed in Public Works Committee. Ordinance for amendment, we have none. But before we go on, I just received a text from one of our constituents. Council members, they want you to identify what committee that you are associated with. So Ms. Bowers, I will start with you. Would you please identify what committee that you chair, please?
Sure. Good evening again. My name is Danielle Bowers. I chair the Building and Housing Committee. So that encompasses the Building and Housing Department within the city, a little bit of the IT department, and a small portion of the Communications Department.
Thank you, Ms. Bowers. Ms. Green.
Thank you, President Williams. My name is Ausha Green. I am the chair of the Public Safety Department, which encompasses fire, police, and codes.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Mr. Mattson.
Hi, Dave Mattson. I am the chair of the Community and Economic Development Committee. I would argue my committee is one of the broader committees, so I touch on a number of different topics, but largely I would say if there's a land development plan, it would go through my committee, or if it's related to community development block grant monies that get allocated to nonprofits, and small businesses, and supporting them and assisting them, and workforce development and working with local nonprofits as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mattson. Mr. Alec.
Good evening. My name is Ben Allett, Vice President of City Council and Chair of Budget and Finance, overseeing any allocations of financial standpoint within the city, and of course overseeing the annual budget and finance passage of the annual budget for the city. And the general fund provisions.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Mr. Majors.
Yes, good evening. My name is Westburn Majors. I'm the chair of the Public Works Committee, which we have oversight over the city sanitation, highways, traffic engineering, a portion of park maintenance, as well as vehicle management and the city engineering.
Thank you very much. Ms. Daniels.
Yes, I'm chair of the Parks and
You went out.
Sorry, I'm Shemaine Daniels, and I'm chair of the Parks and Recreation Committee.
Thank you, Ms. Daniels. And I'm President Wanda Williams, and I'm chair of the Administration Committee, overseeing any legislation dealing with the city of Harrisburg. I can take any legislation that comes in and put in my committee. It doesn't have to be designated to any other chairs, but I see fit that I always try to make sure that each of the chairs receive any legislation that has any correspondence with their committee. Thank you very much. And thank you for the resident who texted me and wanted to know what different committees each of the council members sit on. I'm sorry. We now move on to ordinance for final passage. Mr. Petrosky, please read Bill 13.
Bill 13 of 2020 is an ordinance vacating and striking from the official map of the city of Harrisburg a portion of Kent Alley within the block bounded by 1820 North 5th Street, North 5th Street, Kelker Street, and Fulton Street, and an unnamed Grocer's Alley running from the portion of Kent Alley to Kelker Street pursuant to Chapter 3-109 of the codified ordinances of the city of Harrisburg.
Council members, any additional questions, comments regarding Bill 13? Hearing none, please call the vote, Mr. Petrosky.
Mr. Allett?
Yes.
Ms. Bowers?
Yes.
Ms. Daniels?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Madsen?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Bill 13 passes.
We now move on to resolutions. Please read Resolution 77 into record, Mr. Petrosky.
Resolution 77 of 2020 is a resolution approving the disposition of surplus equipment and vehicles which have exhausted their useful life for the city operations by the Bureau of Vehicle Management.
Council members, any additional questions or comments regarding Resolution 77? Hearing none, please call the vote, Mr. Petrosky.
Mr. Allett?
Yes.
Ms. Bowers,
Yes.
Ms. Daniels,
Yes.
Ms. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Mattson,
Yes.
Mr. Majors,
Yes.
Ms. Williams.
Yes,
Resolution 77 passes.
thank you. Moving on to resolution 83.
Resolution 83 of 2020 is a resolution ratifying an agreement between the City of Harrisburg and Servco Insurance Services Incorporated for the provision of third-party administrative services relating to general liability and related claims.
Council members, any additional questions or comments on resolution 83? Hearing none, please call the vote, Mr. Petrosky.
Mr. Allett?
Yes.
Ms. Bowers?
Yes.
Ms. Daniels?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes,
Resolution 83 passes.
thank you. Moving on to resolution 87.
Resolution 87 of 2020 is a resolution approving the preliminary final subdivision and land development plan submitted by Tark Castile on behalf of TLC Work-Based Training Programs, Inc. to construct 8 residential units on a vacant lot at 440 Kelker Street.
Council members, any additional questions or comments? I have one. Mr. Majors, did you get a clarification whether or not they're going to use toters or they're going to use the big bins?
The last clarification that I received was that they were going to be using the bins because of access issues in order for the toters to get there. But I think we're good with that. And I'll just talk with Dave Weston, Mr. Aaron Johnson, just to verify.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no other additional questions, Mr. Petrosky, please call the vote.
Mr. Allett?
Yes.
Ms. Bowers?
Yes.
Ms. Daniels?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes,
Resolution 87 passes.
thank you. Moving on to resolution 89.
Resolution 89 of 2020 is a resolution authorizing the city to negotiate and enter into a master certified local government grant agreement with the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission, PHMC, providing for eligibility to apply for grants through the Certified Local Government Grant Program for projects that support the city's historic preservation program.
Council members, any questions, additional questions or comments on resolution 89? Hearing none, please call the vote.
Mr. Allett?
Yes.
Ms. Bowers?
Yes.
Ms. Daniels?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes,
Resolution 89 passes.
thank you. Moving on to resolution 90, 2020. Please be given to record, Mr. Petrosky.
Resolution 90 of 2020 is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Harrisburg approving the provisions of a term sheet to modify and amend the second amended and restated settlement agreement between the City of Harrisburg and AMBAC Assurance Corporation.
That will be placed in Budget and Finance Committee. Moving on to resolution 91.
Resolution 91 of 2020 is a resolution authorizing the City of Harrisburg to negotiate, enter into a domestic animal protective services agreement with Humane Society of Harrisburg area to provide services to the City of Harrisburg's animal control program.
That will be placed in Public Safety Committee. Moving on to resolution 92.
Resolution 92 of 2020 is a resolution ratifying the City of Harrisburg's application for driving PA Ford Level 2 EV charging rebate for $36,000 to help offset the costs of installing 4 EV additional dual plug charging stations on City Island.
That will be placed in Parks and Recreation Committee. Moving on to resolution 93.
Resolution 93 of 2020 is a resolution authorizing the City of Harrisburg to negotiate, enter into a multi-year agreement with Property Registration Champions LLC to register vacant, abandoned, and foreclosed properties within the city.
That will be placed in Building and Housing Committee. Moving on to resolution 94.
Resolution 94 of 2020 is a resolution authorizing the City of Harrisburg to enter into a professional services contract with Mavic Strategies for strategic guidance and intelligence gathering for lobbying related services.
That will be placed in Budget and Finance Committee. Moving on to resolution 95.
Resolution 95 of 2020 is a resolution authorizing the City of Harrisburg to negotiate and enter into an intergovernmental cooperation agreement with the Borough of Pembroke for the purpose of authorizing the city to provide municipal solid waste and recycling collection and disposal services within the borough.
That will be placed in the Public Works Committee. Moving on to Resolution 96.
Resolution 96 of 2020 is a resolution authorizing the city of Harrisburg to negotiate and enter into a intergovernmental cooperation agreement with the borough of Paxton for the purpose of authorizing the city to provide municipal solid waste and recycling collection and disposal services within the borough.
That also will be placed in the Public Works Committee. Moving on to Resolution 97.
Resolution 97 of 2020 is a resolution authorizing the city of Harrisburg to negotiate and enter into a professional service contract with Micaiah S. Goldberg and Associates Consulting LLC to provide program management consulting services related to the city's FDA Retail Standards Grant Program.
That will be placed in Budget and Finance Committee. Moving on to Resolution 98.
Resolution 98 of 2020 is the resolution authorizing the city of Harrisburg to negotiate, enter into a professional services agreement with Murray Associates Architects PC for the purpose of providing architectural and interior design services related to alterations to the existing flooring in 2 firehouses.
That will be placed in Public Safety Committee. We now move on to old business. Council members, is there any additional old business that you would like to speak about? Mr. Majors?
Yes, I'll just note that we will be, I'd just like to add for our next work session, which will be legislative session, excuse me, December 10th, the resolution regarding the vacation of, the bill number slipping my mind right now, but regarding the Teamsters and the street vacation in the area of I guess Radnor and Jefferson Streets. We'll add that to the next agenda. I've been doing some outreach to the residents that had a concern. I just want to make sure that we're going to continue to move forward on that street vacation.
Okay. Are they okay with that, Mr. Majors, in your conversation with them?
I need to have an additional conversation just to clarify.
Okay, thank you. Any other old business, council members? Moving on to new business. Is there any new business, council members?
Again, I'll just note, as I did at the last legislative session, as we're getting ready to celebrate, Thanksgiving, as was mentioned earlier during the prayer portion, that we just hope that folks are mindful of the spread of coronavirus. We are seeing a continued uptick in case counts. And we know that the lagging indicators that come after that, unfortunately, will become hospitalizations and deaths. So we just want to make sure that people are safe throughout this holiday season. Enjoy utilizing technology to spend some time with your family if you can't, and stay with the folks that are in your immediate household as much as possible. We just want to make sure that everyone is going to be responsible and encourage responsible activities during this time as we're getting closer to vaccines. So we just want people to remain safe throughout this season.
Thank you, Mr. Majors. I just want to remind everyone that December the 1st, City Council will have your work session. On December the 8th is our first budget hearing. The second budget hearing is December the 9th, and the third date is December the 10th, and that's our last legislative session for the year. Anything else, council members? I want to take this opportunity to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving and certainly a safe holiday. Have a motion to adjourn, please, council members.
So moved.
Have a second. Have a second, please.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everyone. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
You too.
Good night, everyone.